Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for the fifth in about a 25-part series, journeying a couple chapters at a time through Holly by Stephen King. But if you're here on part 5, you already knew that. So, what happened in these two chapters? Em and Rod are showing their age. The couple struggles to do, well, pretty much anything. And Emily actually needs the wheelchair now, which kind of dampens the thrill of the hunt. But they are eating Peter Steinman, so they're still in business. Cut to Holly, who makes some phone calls, and every time she thinks of her mother, she starts thinking about how she's a millionaire now. Every time she thinks about her mother who's dead now, she starts thinking about how she's a millionaire now. Okay, cool. Cool. And she's making phone calls about the case, and the bike is in good condition, right? That keeps sticking with her. The bike is in good condition, and the helmet. There's no helmet. She didn't find the helmet. That is sticking with her. Oh, and she visited the library, and they were relatively good-looking girls that she talked to who giggled into their masks. That's it, and that's going to be one of the sort of writer's corner uh, criticisms I have for this chapter, these chapters. But let's start with the lit crit part. We have here on page 91, right? I think I put down. They watch TV and have their dessert, spooning up a mixture of raspberry sorbet and Peter Steinman's brains. Yeah, I mean, that's okay. I got it. We kind of probably saw that coming. Okay. Then on the next page, so finally we get that there is cannibalism involved here, right? We are not just killing people and shoving them into a wood chipper. We're actually eating these individuals. But on the next page, we get this little tidbit. Although how long talking about eating Peter Steinman's brains. Although how long the effects will last, neither of them know. He is the youngest they've ever taken, barely, into puberty. There's a great deal about what they've been doing that they don't know. But Roddy says he's learning more each time. Also, and to state the obvious, survival is the prime directive. Okay, so that's a little bit of bad writing at the end there. Of course, survival is the prime directive. I don't know exactly what it is that we're talking about, but we understand that if there are effects to be had from eating some, okay, whatever. But there's possibly some magic afoot. Some black magic, possibly. Some blood magic, maybe. Some paranormal stuffs, etc. So finally, we do have that from this chapter. We understand that from this chapter, which should be adding to a foreboding nature about the whereabouts of Bonnie currently. I would contest that part of this, part of the reason that there is no foreboding nature, there is no suspense, there is no building drama, which maybe I'm the only one who doesn't sense that. Maybe it is dramatic for you. I would contend that it's because of the non-linear writing of this novel. We don't currently have Bonnie with this couple. We don't even know if she's there. So I think that I don't know. I really don't know. I'm sure that this was a very difficult novel to write, being non-linear as it is. Being as there are things which are still unfolding, surely this was not the easiest novel to write, but I don't feel any urgency in the pages. I don't feel any urgency in the writing. I don't feel any urgency from the story. I don't feel any urgency from Holly. Holly's just now sitting around thinking about how she's a millionaire. She tells us at one point during this pair of chapters that, there is a case to be solved. I have to stop thinking about how I'm a millionaire now. There's a case to be solved. But if she has to remind the readers who's feeling what and when, which leads me to my next point. Does this chapter do anything for Holly's likability? Now, I mentioned last episode how I had a chance run in with someone else who was reading, or had read, I suppose, this novel, and I mentioned Holly's likability. I said, she's just not a likable character. There's nothing I can get behind with this character. He had no idea what I was talking about. So, just like everything that we come across in this series, this is sort of a one sided conversation, right? You are not here in real time to correct me on something if there is something I'm missing. But I don't understand how this is a likable character. I like Emily and Rodney way more than I like Holly. They're at least interesting to read about. And the third sort of literary criticism idea I have here, we are now officially over the 100-page mark. 100 pages into a novel, like the classic novel, 60,000 words, 300 pages, that's sort of what you're looking at for a novel. Obviously, this novel is a little bit bigger than that. I believe it's 450 pages, something like that. But 100 pages into a novel, you're looking at about 33% of the way to a regular size novel. That is a sizable chunk of book. Where are we? What do we have so far for this novel? What do we know? What is it in which we are invested? I'm not sure at this point. I'm not terribly positive that there's a whole lot going on. There is one main storyline spread over about a decade's worth of time, and we're getting little snippets of it from two separate sides, the Emily and Roddy side and then the Holly side. And maybe that's what's slowing down the development of this novel just a bit. We do not have one through line. We are not following one character. We are divvying our time between two separate settings. So each of these stories is about 50 pages in. But even then, 50 pages, we should know something a little bit more than the characters' names and their reasons for being in the book. Emily and Roddy are in the book because they are cannibals. Holly is in the book because she is trying to solve a missing persons case. What else do we have? Pardon me. Now let's get to the writer's corner stuff. Inconsistent old folks. What do I mean by that? We have in this chapter from M and Rod a whole lot of lovey-dovey stuff. Is that consistent with the characters that they have built themselves to be through this novel so far? Certainly it makes them more interesting. Certainly that portion of the novel becomes more endearing, becomes something which is easier to want to read because there is this dynamic between the characters. If we buy it, I am inclined to buy it a little bit, but I'm not sure that it was there earlier in the novel. I would have liked to have seen little touches of it. Maybe something like, I don't know, Rod makes sure to turn on her favorite song when they're heading back from their abduction scenes. Something like that. To my reading, this is very much like the ooh from last chapter that we actually carried over into this chapter, in that I don't remember too much of that sort of thing popping up earlier in the book. And the last thing that I have here, and this is going to be a short episode, the last Writer's Corner note that I have here is a quote from Hemingway. Never confuse movement with action. And I know that there is some verisimilitude to Holly parking in a parking lot, getting out, and pacing back and forth while she's on the phone. I know that there is some verisimilitude in Holly always going to her car and taking off her mask. It feels it's just movement. It's not action. It's just movement. Imagine if these phone calls were always taking place en route to somewhere else. That could be movement, but in search of something else. The part that got me thinking about this in this pair of chapters is when Holly gets in her car and it's hot. Okay, I mean, we can feel the scene a little bit. Are we inclined to care? Do we care that it's hot for Holly? Do we care that Holly is sweating in her car? Do we care that Holly feels the energy flowing through her body and she has to just get out and start moving? Do we care about it? If we don't, it's just movement. And just movement can be something that adds to the story, but if it doesn't, it's just movement. If these phone calls were taking place en route to somewhere else, that's just movement, but it's in search of something else in the story. I'm not sure I have ever read a private detective story, Private Eye, as Holly has taken exception to in this chapter. I'm not sure I have ever read a Private Eye story with less action. Think about it. Post office, or not post office, Ham on Rye? Which one was it? Whatever it was that Bukowski wrote a private detective story. And there was always somebody to be punched. Now, it wasn't really in service of much else in the story, but there was always somebody to be punched. But when there is someone else to be punched, it tells you a little something about that person, that Private Eye's life. Doesn't it? It tells you that what he's going through is a rough and tumble world. I don't feel that from Holly. Where am I at? The Maltese Falcon. I couldn't remember the name of the novel. The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. There is always rough talk going on in that novel. There is always rough stuff being done in that novel. You know that that novel takes place in a dangerous world. Do we have any sense of foreboding or danger here from Holly? I contend that it is because we have not had any action from Holly. Even when the individual has to question some, 14-year-old boys, she gets scared and calls someone in to do it for her. That doesn't seem very rough and tumble, and, maybe she's not. But if we are learning this individual and growing with them, as should be the case in literature, maybe that would be a growing process for Holly instead of just, well, let me call my buddy who will come in and talk to these young chaps for me. I'm not sure if if my distaste for this novel so far is because of literary criticism stuff. I don't think that this is literature. I think this is just story. Or is it because the writing isn't very good? I found over the years that I'm a bit of a how should I say? I'm a bit of a style snob when it comes to literature. If the writing on the page is too plain, but not plain enough to be sparse, I kind of languish in the pages. So I don't know why. Maybe it's both. Maybe I don't like this story because of both reasons. But that is this pair of chapters from Holly. I hope to have you back for the next one. We are right now in the middle of October, and there is a new Edgar Allan Poe playlist on the channel. So if you are inclined towards the horror type stuff, maybe check out those videos as I'm a little bit proud of the work that I've been doing in October so far, and I hope to have you back for some of the other videos. So, we'll see with this novel.